All right, beautiful morning to you. 13 minutes past 8. Good morning again. My name is Ifeyemi Andrew. And this morning, our conversation on the Morning Crossfire has a lot to do with the recent crackdown on Bureau de Change operators. And I have a special guest who would be joining me for this conversation. Mr. Olusoji Oluwole is the national president of ASSBIFI. Mr. Soji, thank you for joining us. Good morning to you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm pretty sure it's morning where you are because you had told me you traveled. So I really appreciate that you're making out time to be with us on the show because I understand it's about 6 hours or more behind. So it's quite early over there. So thank you. We really appreciate the time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, for those who do not know what ASSBIFI is, I will quickly just tell them. ASSBIFI is an acronym for Association of Senior Staff of Banks, Insurance, and Financial Institutions. And the national president is speaking with us because recently we've seen a crackdown on BDC operators. That's Bureau de Change operators, or in layman terms, the people you see around the streets selling dollars and pounds and exchanging currency. Those guys, well, they call them Bureau de Change operators. And recently, some of them were arrested in Port Harcourt. Others have been arrested in Abuja and Lagos. It's been going on for many reasons. And one of those reasons is some people say they are responsible for the dollar continuously climbing and the naira falling. I mean, at the moment, it's about 1,500 thereabout, if I'm not mistaken, because the president of the association here in Rivers State had said they used to sell for 1,500, but banks sell for 1,700. He made that assertion and said, so why do they arrest them? People in the banks are the ones that are the problem, not the BDC operators. They're just trying to make ends meet. They buy these things and sell. Mr. Soji, I would like you to educate us on this. How we came about the Bureau de Change operators, one, and what their modus operandi is.
Thank you very much. What I can tell you, when they say BDC operators, growing up, what we knew as Bureau de Change were people who operated from offices in various locations across the country, where you go in, you fill a form, you make your exchange. Now, those that are being referred to today as Bureau de Change operators are roadside sellers. Now, I must say here that no one can clearly say who they represent. Perhaps they represent perhaps they represent people who have been licensed by the CBN. Please note that, licensed by the CBN to operate as Bureau de Change. So the question for us right now is, well, the question you asked was, how did they come about?
Yes.
I think it's just the case of the regulator not doing what they should have done several decades ago by taking them off the street. Because, it's just like street trading. Somebody goes out and tries, nothing happens. One more joins, another 3 join, another 5 join. Before you know, it becomes a full-blown market. And that is exactly what has happened in Nigeria today, where people now found it easier to be in traffic and just call one of them, conclude the transaction, exchange the money, and just drive away. In fact, some people already have customers, so they just call them on the phone, or meet me at so place, get this ready, and they all go on like that. So I think the reason why they've been allowed to grow and become so large in our nation today is because the regulator failed in their own responsibility of regulating the people that they had been licensed, that they had licensed, checking where they were operating from, checking their operations to see that they were working in line with the rules and regulations of a BDC.
All right. From what you've said, it's also possible that these men who are into this business could also be representing BDC firms scattered across the country, and they could be referred to what many might call the foot soldiers, the ones that go to the street and bootleg this product or bootleg the market for the companies that they represent, which is also very possible. But now is them being arrested brings us to ask, Are they the real problem of why we have the naira falling drastically against the dollar?
Well, a lot has been said about them. Now, I will ask today that if we had an idea of the volume of transactions that happens along those locations, are those volumes enough to create the kind of problem that we have? Yeah, they may be part of the problem, but I do not believe that they are the major reason for the problem today. If you look at it, the last 1 month or so, the regulator and the government have come out to accuse almost every sector of the economy for the woes. So today is the bank, tomorrow is the private sector.
Because I know Binance Nigeria is also now in the eye of the storm. We'll come to that eventually, but
I read. So they've gone there. If you recall, I think it was last year or 2 years ago where Aboki FX was blamed. So many people have been blamed.
But all of those things didn't change anything, especially for the case of Aboki FX. It still didn't change the situation. It was still the way it was, or even worse.
Precisely. And what I'm trying to point out is that fingers have been pointed everywhere except inwards. And I would have thought that by now, the regulator would have come out to say, oh, we've looked inwards. I mean, there's no problem in coming out to tell Nigerians the truth so that we know where we are and we know how we're supposed to address those issues, because this is not something that rests solely on the shoulder of the CBN governor. It's a collective responsibility by every Nigerian, but you can only know your own part of the responsibility when you know the truth. Like someone used to tell me, nobody is going to punish you for telling you the truth. What you've simply done is to come out and tell everybody where the problem is. And it may be just one little person down the road who will be able to come with the solution. I mean, going to the doctor and saying I'm not well, and then he says, oh, what's wrong with you? And then you keep accusing the person next door as the person who looked at you one way, or somebody who is trying to be diabolical with you. You are not telling the doctor how you are feeling. You are not telling him the symptoms. You're not telling him what you took, what you ate, what you drank, and you expect the doctor to be able to cure you. And that is exactly what is happening to us today.
All right. Is it also possible, because from my research, found that could it be possible that the banks not being able to handle the demand or the business of this exchange led to us having these operators, and then now the streets filled with these guys who do the business for us? We know that before it used to be something for the purposes of travelers and foreigners into the country. They have travelers checks for resale. All of these tourists who want to exchange monies, and sometimes going to the bank is the issue. You have these operators who we just do simple transactions, and it was that simple at the time. But now it even went as far as saying, if we look at the operations of the Bureau de Change, according to the CBN, this was a document, a circular in 2007. I'm pretty sure it could have been upgraded now. But one thing that was very clear and still consistent is that the maximum amount per transaction for BDC would be determined from time to time by the CBN with respect to business and personal travel allowances, amongst many others that were put there. The maximum commission chargeable for banknotes and travelers check. They also had that how much at most, how many percent you could add to it, etc., etc. If we feel that these guys on the roads, these BDC operators, are becoming a problem, what role is the bank playing in all of this? Because how these guys get the dollars has been a question. There's always a source. Somebody gave them the dollars. They bought it from somewhere to come and sell and make money. It's like people who invest in coins on Binance. We buy the coins and we wait for when, it appreciates, and then you cash out and make some profits. So what is the role of the bank in all of this?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad you brought this question up, because I found that over the last couple of weeks, banks have really been battered. Bank executives, bank workers, and so on has been the cause. Now, what people do not understand is that banks are more regulated than BDCs. Now, there are two sources of foreign exchange in banks. The first is from the government, which is the majority of it. The second is from the customers, either corporate or individual. Now, for the corporate or individual, the bank simply has the duty to receive and disburse according to the according to the wish or according to the wishes of these customers. On the side of the CBN releases funds to you based on request, things like PTA, things like request for payment through from M, and so on. So what happens is that you make a request, the CBN releases the fund to you, and you make the payment. In fact, at the end of the day, it's the CBN that is actually tracking those
Mr. Soji, hold that thought, please. Just hold the thought there. Okay. We have a very short commercial. We'll continue here because we know that the CBN is saying we'll be charging banks to pay for more for dollars. And the CBN is even talking of resume selling dollars to BDC operators because it was paused under the Emefiele administration. We'll get into all of these details and continue from here. Just stay on the line for us for a few minutes. This is the national president of ASSBIFI, Mr. Olusoji Oluwole. Get on Facebook and join the conversation. Nigeria Info 92.3 PH. We are streaming live. And remember, we're asking you whether you believe what is being said about Bureau de Change operators or even the black market operators. Because we have the Bureau de Change operators, and I'll go into that detail and give us some of the CBN guidelines before you can be a Bureau de Change operator. There are certain amounts of money you need to deposit, licenses you need to purchase, before you commence your operation. There are certain criteria you have to meet. A copy of your share certificate should be issued to each stakeholder, certified true copy of the shareholders register in which the equity interest of each stakeholder is properly reflected together with your original for citing. There's also a certified true copy of the form CO7 for the particular BDC. So some of the guys we have on the streets might be registered or licensed to do what they do. So it's technically them being black market, operating in the black market. But there are also some of them that could be representing these bureau de change companies that we have across the country. So now it's difficult to tell which one from which one. And some of them have their companies licensed. I mean, I know some of them that operate. I've seen some of the, when you go around those areas, you see some of them that operate and all of that. So then there's a problem. We cannot differentiate which from which. But just so you know, there are certain demands, and these are the demands. In fact, you should have some management requirements: managing director, chief executive, senior management officers and managers. Then you have support staff and cashier. These positions should be filled if you are going to have a BDC operating in this country. Those are the management requirements. And this is an interesting part. You need a minimum paid up share capital of 10 million naira. It could have been reviewed by now, possibly at the time. There's also a non-refundable application fee of 10,000 naira, a non-refundable licensing fee of 100,000 naira, which I'm saying all of this could have been reviewed upward or downwards. But these are the criteria that you need to meet financially. And there's also plenty more. There's also the application for the license, and there's a procedure for that. So it means, if we go by this, that some people on the streets might not be BDC operators, just guys in the black market doing their own business, but some of them could also be representatives of the BDC operators. So now that we have that cleared out and well understood, I'll come back to my guest. Mr. Soji, thank you for staying on for us.
Thank you.
I just needed to put out that information and inform the listener better so they know where we're coming from. So before the break, you were trying to explain to us, because I was asking the role of the bank in all of this. We know that even if you go to banks and you want to exchange foreign currency, some banks will tell you to go to the black market that they can't or they don't. So it makes it even more difficult. Why the banks do not? Why can't a person just go to a bank and exchange their currency? And there was a time even in the country where the rates just recently for the black market was the same to the rates in the banks.
Yes.
And we were at that level. So what is happening? Why is it difficult? What is happening with the banks? You were trying to explain that. The bank's own position in this.
Yes, so like I was saying, I explained the part of the individual. So someone like you, somebody like me, I have money, I pay it in, I have a right to withdraw, I have a right to transfer, and nobody can question what I do with my own money. Now, what is received from the CBN by banks is basically for transactions that have been registered, that have been found to be valid to receive funding from the CBN. So we find things like PTA, like school fees, medical, purchases abroad, and all those things. Now, of those things, the prices are determined by the CBN, which also specifies the spread of the bank, which is what the commission is like, just like the circular that you read now, that says that, for this money that you are selling, this is how much you are selling, and this is the maximum spread you can make.
You can make.
Yes. And it is basically that same kind of rule that operates in BDCs as well. So what we find, and that is why if you as a customer go into a bank, the bank can only buy from you at the price that has been stated on the board. What you find on the board is what has been prescribed by the regulator. And it is practically the same rule that applies with BDCs. So I'll pause there and quickly go back to the BDCs. Now, we're talking about those people on the road. And one thing I think we agreed on is that a large percentage of them, if not all of them, are foot runners for the BDCs. So what's happening is that the BDCs are probably operating a market within the market. Now, transactions that you do on the road are not reflected in their records. It is not registered, it is not booked, so nobody knows how much you have bought or how much you have sold. So if the CBN says you can only buy $1, say for 1,000 naira from a customer, the person on the road puts a little spread over it and says, I can buy it from you from 1,020 naira. Now that 20 naira for some, depending on the volume, is quite a lot. And then he holds it. Now, the BDC does not have money to sell out at 1,050 naira, but the man on the road will have it available for 1,100 naira. That person has made a spread as well, which the bank cannot do. Okay, so whatever price you find in banks, whether it is higher than the BDC or lower than the BDC, it is based on what the CBN has instructed.
But Mr. Soji, don't you think, if I might come in, don't you think, would you agree that if the banks were more open and it's easily accessible for people to just go in and exchange and exchange the currency, people might really just use the banks more than go to the streets?
I think what you should be saying is, if the laws are more flexible, it is not the banks that determine this. The bank is a very regulated environment. You can't just walk in and say you want to buy dollar just for the sake of buying dollar. If today, for you to buy PTA, you have to go and register on a system that has been set up by the CBN, where you put in your travel details and all those things. And these were measures that made a lot of sense to checkmate the issue of round tripping or falsification of intent to travel. So what is expected that if I sell you this money for this travel and you do not embark on that travel, you are obligated to return that money to the bank. And what we found now is that, what is expected, don't let me say what is happening, what is expected is that based on that information, someone is supposed to be tracking your activity to see that you actually left the country on the day you said you were leaving and returned on the day you said you were returning. And then beyond that, banks are also expected to publish in at least one national daily the foreign exchange that was sold and for what purpose. I know banks have been meeting that obligation every week. I think it's supposed to be a weekly thing. So those regulations are there, which are failing on the streets. And like we've continued to say, who is checkmating what is, or rather, who is allowing what is happening on the street to happen? Just after you came back from that commercial, I heard you reading out the rules governing the operations of BDCs. And yes, you are correct. It was updated recently, just about a week or two ago. There has been an update. There is a new circular that makes it more stringent to operate. The minimum capital, the licensing fees, and all those things, and who can own, who is excluded from owning, and all that stuff. But the circular is out. The rules have been out.
Because
the government and the regulator, ready to enforce what is in the circular.
Because from what we see, it's expected that the allocation will be sold at a rate of about 1,301 naira to $1. That's from the new circular at the Nigeria Autonomous Foreign Exchange Market. This was trading day dated February 27, 2024. And there's even talks of going online for the BDCs, proposing that they might have to do what they do online. But my worry now is, if I have to take it a bit further, there's never enough time. We have to also take calls, and there are plenty of questions to ask. To take it a bit further, we also see Binance Nigeria in the mix of all of this now. And they are saying that billions of naira in fines is what they could suffer. What's the interest in all of this? Some people would think perhaps it's the government looking for ways to source for funds and make cash. What's happening? And the fact that we've not been able to sanitize the system. Sorry, I'm putting too many questions to you at the same time. The fact that we've not been able to sanitize the system with regards to how we manage the movement of exchange of dollar and the rates in our country, we are seeing the CBN still wanting to resume sale of dollars to the BDCs. We do not know how to take care of the people in the black market on the streets just yet. And those people are pointing fingers to the banks, saying the banks and its executives are some of the people responsible for why we have this fluctuation in rates in the manner that we do. So if you can just respond to both this separately, it will be very fine before we take the calls.
Yeah, so a quick one. I'm not sure that issue of selling at this fixed rate is correct because rates are based on demand and supply. So today it could be 1,300, tomorrow it could be 1,100.
So when,
It all depends.
so when the BDC,
Now,
when the, sorry to interrupt you, some of those that were arrested in Port Harcourt, BDC operators, we spoke to their chairman, and he says, for instance, just some days ago, they were selling at 1,300, 1,500. Banks were selling at 1,700. So what could be the difference? Why would that of the bank be higher than even the black market? So what's responsible?
So yet again, people keep saying bank, but it is not the bank. The bank is only acting based on what the regulator has instructed. So it is the regulator that will be able to answer that question. If I've been told something has been sold to me at a particular price, and I'm told to sell at a particular price, I cannot sell below because I'm going to run short.
At loss.
I cannot sell above because I will be
punishment.
A rule. Yes, and I'll be punished. I'll be punished for it. Now, just quickly, all this talk about bank executives collecting money and selling on the black market. What people do not understand is that all these transactions that take place when we are talking about dollar, there is no cash exchange between the CBN and the banks. These are paper transactions. So what happens is basically like an account adjustment. So it's like you transferring money to me. You're not giving me cash, but the money gets into my account and I receive a credit and I'm supposed to use it for something. So it's not as if banks are collecting cash. The majority of the cash that you will find in bank vaults are cash that belongs to customers who have come to deposit their own cash and who also have a right to come and take their own cash out. Now, when we talk about the accusations and everything, it's so funny. Maybe you have heard it somewhere. I haven't. Where an individual or an institution so far has been indicted, because it's unfair to go on generalizing and demonizing an industry or a set of individuals. At least come out and tell us that, in our investigation, we found that this or this happened in this location.
But why don't these investigations happen? Okay, just take an example with the past elections. It was an open secret that politicians dollarized the Nigerian money space. It was an open secret. It was everywhere. But at the end of the day, it's almost like nobody pointed to those top politicians and individuals who do these things. At parties, people spray dollar. Nobody chooses to. Has anybody looked at it as the CBN, as bank says to the CBN, these things need to be checked and looked at?
So I'll tell you something. If you look at, when we look at the people who are patronizing BDCs in code, because I cringe when people call them BDCs. In fact, let's call them what they are: black market operators. When people who patronize these black market operators are those who have received cash or who came into the country from other parts of the world and have dollar cash and want to get maximum value for their money. So we who are complaining are also part of the problem. We also form part of the problem ourselves because we are the ones feeding them. And what they simply do is that they are buying it off us and holding it. Or we are also holding, hoping for
the price to go up.
Rise.
So that we...
Exactly. So when you look at that odd $500 there, the $200, the $5,000, the $2,000 being held in the hands of several people all around, then it becomes a major problem. So while we are accusing banks, while we're accusing the government, while we're accusing the regulator, we should also look inwards and see the role that we play in this. We are the ones who are holding the funds. We are the ones who are feeding these black market operators, who in turn are representing representing those a number of those BDCs and doing those transactions under the desk. So you come into those locations and you will see, today you did a transaction of $10,000, whereas that person had done transaction worth probably $100 million, and you do not know because there is no record to show for it.
Because of the time, in 2 minutes, what's up with the Binance situation now? because a lot of people who have Binance accounts and operate Binance and trade in crypto, which is, I mean, it's a crime now in the country. What's happening? If you can give us an insight into this, because now there are fines, billions go running into billions, and Binance have been asked to make certain upgrades. If you operate a Binance account, your P2P is in changes made. There's been several forms of verifications and etc. etc. What's the purpose and what's responsible for this?
Again, I think it is poor monitoring and regulation. So, in my own opinion, the person regulating failed in their responsibility.
Who are those people who regulate? Because Binance Nigeria has been operating for a while in the country, so it's shocking to see that. Oh, now it's almost like what happened with Facebook and Twitter. I beg your pardon, Twitter at the time, and it was banned. And we're like, they've been operating for quite a while. How come now you just realize that they're saying things that you need to put in place?
Yeah, it's almost similar to what I said about the BDC, that nobody was checking what was happening underhand. So just like the epidemic, because that's what I'll call it, of the black market operators, that nobody checkmated that market when it started. If that market had been checkmated, then we won't be saying what we're saying today. The same thing with Binance. Now, I cannot this morning indict Binance until I see proof that they have actually violated something, because I read, I think it was yesterday, that they needed to explain the outflow.
Yeah, because the CBN said that certain billions of dollars had been laundered through Binance. That was exactly CBN's report.
Yes, and as at yesterday, I understand that two of the directors were detained when they came into the country to sort out all these issues. So I think we can just wait and see the outcome and see, maybe, just maybe this time, somebody will be able to come out and tell us that these are the people who did that. One, to confirm that volume actually occurred, and two, to be able to identify and name those people who own those funds that went through Binance to other locations, and three, hoping that when all that is resolved, we will actually see the impact on the exchange rate. Because so far, what we find is that there will be an impact maybe for about 3 or 4 hours, maximum one day. And then it goes back to what it
used to be. All right, let's take some messages and open the phone lines. Number to call 0817 923 0002. 0817 923 0003. Please have your question written if possible, or your contribution written, so that the moment you come on, you just go straight to the point and not beat around the bush, so we maximize the little time we have. At the OG KOCC says this is as a result of bad economic policy and corruption. That's on Facebook. Thank God Ability says banks are responsible for the rise of the dollars for me in this country. This person says, good morning. For me, nobody's left out because we don't trust anyone anymore. Stanley, that message is from you on Facebook. Let's go to Bonny Island. Christian, good morning. Quickly, straight to the point.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, let me share one of my experience back in those days. That is dating back, that should be around 91, 92, 93. There's a friend of mine that I normally go to buy dollars from at Broad Street. If I say Broad Street, you should know how busy that is the heart of Lagos. Most of this exchange of dollars from Naira takes place back then. And I was in his office. His name is Ibrahim. I like Ibrahim. Around that 9:30, 10 in the morning, and some people came with bags of dollars then, to exchange and to drop for him and go back. What am I insinuating here? You see, most of these bureau de change and all these people that change dollar on the road, they work hand in hand with the central bank. Instead of making these dollars available to those who need this thing, to go and buy whatever goods or to import into the country, you understand? They send these dollars to the streets. That 100 naira to 200 extra on this dollar goes back to this pocket. This is what they are interested in doing. So let me tell Nigeria. Can you imagine a country like Nigeria where you have crude oil,
All right, Christian. At this point, we have to move on from you. I think your point already has been made on the situation.
Payment is in dollars. Listen to me. This is a very important issue for Nigerians to look and ponder on. We have so many other commodities that are sold, exported in dollars. The federal government should not lack dollars to the extent that and the naira will be going for 1,000 points to a dollar. Very wrong. It's the negligence and the complicity of the government that is causing all these things. When this money comes in dollars from from exports, most of this money goes into private pocket. You don't take good account of it. That is why we find ourselves in a night.
Christian, well said.
This country makes so much money in dollars.
I'm sure my guest to respond, Christian. Thank you very much. But I think you just made a very valid point. We'd have to move on to another caller. We don't have all the time. Muriel in Okrika, good morning.
Thank you, Kemi. Good morning.
Yep.
Yeah, actually, I listen to all materials that need to become a good change agent. It's not as if they are that changes, And why is it that it's only people from the south and from the east don't meet up these criteria? It is only our brothers from the north. If you go to Oluwole, if you go to presidential, they are the ones that are included. Why is it necessary to pick up part of this business? I mean, if you go to the banks now, before when you enter a bank, you see their screen, foreign exchange, the current rate and the like. But trust me, if you enter banks now, you likely see these things. It's like they put this out. I don't know if it's a calculated plan. I want to link it up then when you get the dollar at a cheaper rate for the real guys than when you get it directly from the bank. Is it that CBN is now dealing directly with these guys that they get it directly from the CBN bank and they don't longer do it with the bank. And the federal government making the very defense operators with the current fall in naira is totally absurd, honestly. That's why I say the mindset of our leaders is so towards leadership that they cannot, because of this mindset, they cannot fix anything in this country. We just want to pick up the little things that are about to be moved to cover the overall bigger picture.
All right, Muriel.
It's a bigger picture to why the naira is falling, and they should tackle that.
Thank you, Muriel. Temple from Forces Avenue. Good morning.
Good morning once again, the very distinguished.
All right, go straight to the point, please.
The question you rightly asked, I don't think these BDC operators are responsible for the rise of dollar. The last time I said the very distinguished me, the CBN is the first bank in this country. They put up and set up rules and regulation in terms of policies that some of these other banks should comply with. And if them on their own part have compromised, because when you talk about CBN, you talk about the government and its policies and everything. Then if they are not being proactive in their own part, are they not giving the other banks stuff to land it? The very distinguished and I also want to bring the attention. Go on this some of these BDC names and how they are being licensed. You'll be marveled. The kind of names they look as if anybody that comes up, they give the person license. They don't even care. They don't even investigate. They don't even, change how much how about the operate. For me, they should step up to their game and do the next.
All right, Temple. Thank you. George from Buguma. Good morning.
Andrew, good morning.
All right, morning.
Andrew, I want to say that directly or indirectly, this illegal business activities we have in this country called whether British or whatever, I think they are also responsible for this misnomer issue that we are having within the falling of the naira. And I want the government to really make sure that these people are completely wiped out of the street of Nigeria, because even the nuisance alone they cause on the street as a result of this business is one that is too many, that should be stopped for me, I think. And I also want to say that in this country, a lot of things are going wrong because you find out that we don't. We have a standard organization, but they are not working to check most of many the standard issues that is going on in this country.
All right, George. Thank you.
We also have price regulatory board, but none of these things are working.
All right, George, well, thank you very much. Your point has been noted. Some of the messages that we also have here, this person says, please, what your guest is saying, can he tell us what the problem is exactly? According to him, he said the CBN knows the exact issue. Okay, minima pre, I would get that to him. I would also even have to ask him the new development with linking NIN and BVN and all of that with banks. But that will be when we return from the commercial. Everything in this country is characterized with corruption, because if BDC operators have been licensed to operate as a means to get dollar, where does the black market then come from? Okay. All right, Mr. Soji, I know you've been hearing those callers. We'll just take a short commercial. When we come back, we'll get your response and final thoughts on the issue before we wrap things up. Stay with us.
The drama, the suspense, the emotions, the gang moments. Don't miss out on Nollywood movies and web series on YouTube.